Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, January 18th, 2026. Coming at you live from home. That's right, our first ever remote show here from Hockey Night in New York. So welcome. Hopefully everything goes well. Appreciate you guys joining us, especially after all the time changes. Thought we were doing 2 o'clock at Bagel Boss, but the weather got in the way. But here we are, 6 p.m. Sunday. The football playoffs are going on. Who cares about that? Skeleton Crew. My name is Sean Cuthbert. With me, as always, is Mr. Arthur Staple. Let's talk some Islander hockey. Let's talk some 2-2-1 on the road trip Islander hockey. Before we do, though, of course, I have to thank our wonderful sponsors, Razor, Kniff, and Launstein, attorneys at law, ready to fight for you. Check them out at razorandkniff.com. That is RAISERANDKENNIFF.com for a free consultation. And if you are hanging out with us in the chat here, you want to get your questions in for Questions Brewing, just type in Questions Brewing, followed by the question, and we will get to it later in the show. So, Arthur, about those Islanders, 2-2-1 on the road trip. That leads them to 26-17-5 with 57 points, still hanging around in second place. Let's see what they did here to start out. Let's go Tuesday against Winnipeg, 5-4 loss in Winnipeg. Down 3-0 early in the second period. The Isles tied up, though, within 2.5 minutes. Duclair, Hyman on a penalty shot. McLean gets a goal there, too. Not sure about the call on Heineman there. We can talk about that on the penalty shot anyway. 2 minutes later, DeMilo puts the Jets back up. They go up 5-3 late in the second period. Schaefer gets a goal at the empty net. At the end of the game, it's not enough, and they drop this one to Winnipeg.
They were just a little too loose. The chances weren't super lopsided. It's just they were giving up a lot of good ones, and really right in front of the net, I thought they were really, really weak. You know, Winnipeg is a big team. They coming off a President's Trophy when they're really down in the dumps this year. They were down in last in the West for a while there. They've rallied a little bit, put some points up, but still not a confident team. And I think you saw that, you know, Connor Hellebuck, who won the MVP and the Vezina last year, giving up a couple of leaky ones. The one to Duclair that kind of got it started was a really soft goal, but you know, just you get out on the road, and I feel like it was kind of a harbinger of things to come for the week for the Islanders out in Western Canada. That they just not good enough, just not playing the way that we're used to them seeing it. You know, Sorokin got his game back together. Obviously, the next game that we'll talk about in Edmonton, but it just feels like whether they've been missing Bo Horvat a little too long, or whether they're just kind of feeling a little too disjointed in terms of how hard they've had to play to kind of keep the chances down. It just nothing was really working there very well in Winnipeg the other night.
No, unfortunately not. And you know, it's kind of this situation here where the Islanders they do well against the good teams. They face teams that are struggling in Winnipeg, and they have a hard time. We're going to talk about some more of that with the way this week went. But it just seems to be something that this team can't get together, where I wouldn't say that they're playing down, but for whatever reason, they're just not getting the results, right?
Yeah, and you know, you score 4 goals, excuse me, and you think, all right, well, the offense is humming, but it felt like, you know, if they were playing a better team and they fell behind by 3, they wouldn't have come back in that game. That was a lot of Winnipeg really kind of letting them off the mat in a short space of time and then kind of seizing it back. It just feels like all the way along, starting the road trip in Nashville where they only scored 1. Nashville's always been playing a lot better in the last month or so that's a different animal. But even the game that they won in Mini, it just felt like, you know, it feels a little bit like they're hanging on at times. And when things start to tilt against them, whether it's a good team or not such a good team, they should be, you know, I feel like the Islanders' 100-point seasons in the last decade or so, we have the same conversation where they seem to be playing down to the level of some of their weaker opponents. So I feel like the guys that are in that room that have been there a long time got to know you can't let your foot off the gas. And certainly I don't think that was the case in Winnipeg. I think it was just more of an all-around dud from the goalie on out. And they rectified some of it in the next game in Edmonton, but really you're still seeing the offense. And again, it feels weird to say it because they got 4. Just, you know, they need to be on top of the game. They need to be ahead of the game in terms of chances, being aggressive. When they fall behind and you get desperate, being able to tie it back up is great. And obviously wasn't the main characters. It was Duclair, who's, had the nice game against Jersey, but went quiet after that. Nice to see him get another one. Heineman, who's been quiet for quite a while outside of the shootout, and the shootout was where he got that goal essentially with the penalty shot. So nice to see him with the
Right.
Franz Nielsen backhand to justice there. And then the fourth line, which to my mind, and we'll talk about it all week, that's been their best line this entire week. It's not saying a whole lot, but that whether McLean, Cizikas, and Gatcombe playing a lot on the offensive zone and kind of playing the right way when the offense isn't coming. Just grind it out. That it was a good play by Casey Cizikas behind the net, turns the puck over, he finds McLean, nice shot from the slot. But they weren't able to sustain it. And I think we're seeing those top three lines, and Patrick Waugh's been shuffling through them, and I think he changed them. The next two games we're going to talk about, they were all different. And it's going to be different again coming tomorrow against Vancouver. Just not enough consistency from the top nine in terms of offensive pressure and creating chances. So in that game, it bit them even with getting the 4 goals.
Yeah, I definitely think we're seeing the struggles of not having guys like Bo Horvat and even Kyle Palmieri in the lineup, right? Where offense is kind of thinned out a little bit, and trying to win by committee here. They've done a decent enough job, but you get these games and these past couple of weeks, and you're kind of seeing the problems there, right?
Yeah, it's it was trending that way when Horvat was out for his first injury, but right around the holiday when they really were struggling to score goals, but they were in a situation where they were defending well. Sorokin was playing lights out every night. Riddick was playing really well because Sorokin was out. So I think they understood the challenge there of not having your top scorer, which is be conservative, be smart, be simple, get what you can get, but really you got to defend your way to points sometimes. And I think they maybe are, feel like on this trip, Mini for sure, obviously a really good high pressure, high octane team. But I feel like in Winnipeg, if you start the game off the right way, it doesn't matter if you're not scoring. You can put a team that's struggling like that down and keep them down in a 2-1, 3-1 game. They didn't seem inclined to play that kind of game, and it really bit them.
Yeah, no question. All right, moving on to better days on Thursday, the 16th. They go into Edmonton. Now, it's funny, of course, they flip the script here, right? You think if they're going to beat somebody, it's going to be Winnipeg. You think if they're going to lose to anybody, it's Edmonton here. And, of course, they get the 1-0 victory, scoreless through 2 periods. Lots of posts there by Edmonton. Duclair gets that goal in the power play off a beauty blind feed from Richie there. Beautiful pass. And that puts them up 1-0 in the third period. They hang on with some spectacular goaltending from Sorokin. He makes 35 saves. And Draisaitl gets that open net towards the end, rings it off the posts again, and somehow the Islanders get out of Dodge with 1-0 with a 1-0 win.
Yep. I mean, when it's not going well, you got to steal the points, and Ilya Sorokin was leading the charge as he's done all year. And I think on the metrics that game was a 4.47 goals saved above expectation for him, which is better than some goalies' entire season so far. So he's leading that metric by a long way. The raw save percentage is a little bit more in the mix with some other goalies, which could fool some people into thinking that he's having a good but not great year. But this guy is having an exceptional season, considering the way the Islanders play, especially the last month or so. They're starting to leak some of those chances that they gave up early in the season,
right?
And he has been shutting the door. It was a good move by Patrick Roy to go right back to him after he didn't play great in Winnipeg. And boy, did he reward that faith from the coach with maybe his best performance of the season. Yep, you got to get lucky too. I think the Evan Bouchard one early in the third period that hit the bar, came down, and then hit the post and somehow stayed out. Not only stayed out, but went right back underneath his pads. Right. I guess you create your own luck, right? When you're playing that well, things start to go your way. And the Draisaitl one, that's not a shot he misses. I mean, he makes that 99 times out of 100. So again, it's pure luck. But maybe there's a little bit of a factor of this guy is working so much magic on us. I've got to be perfect with the shot. And I think the thing you'll never see is when Draisaitl has that one timer with the open side, he shoots it all the way back across and it hits the far post.
Right.
So must have shanked it a little bit. And maybe Ilya Sorokin's he's just in everybody's head. I thought the 2 saves he made on Zach Hyman and tight in that game in the first couple periods really set the tone. He wasn't surrendering any of his crease. Sometimes with Ilya, when he's not going well in previous seasons, you'll see him be a little too deep. He won't challenge for that blue paint, the top of the blue paint. He was challenging. And, I think we saw it in Winnipeg where, guys were on top of him And there was the one goalie interference challenge that failed by Patrick Waugh when Niederreiter was right on top of the blue. But you got to fight for your space. You got to make it look. You got to make it look good, and also try to make the save. And I thought, Edmonton's trying to get to the inside there, right on top of him, and especially Zach Hyman, who's great at that, and Sorokin was fantastic. There was some good supporting casts, even in a game where they didn't generate a ton. Like you said, Cal Ritchie, not just a pass, but the beaver tail saying, going to Matthew Barzal, give it to me. I know what to do with it.
Yes.
You got to love seeing that from a 20-year-old, and he made it work. And so, nice to see a power play goal. The power play's obviously really been struggling. And, a shout out in that game to Matthew Schaefer and Ryan Pulock, who saw a ton of Connor McDavid at 5-on-5. And he torched them in terms of the shot share and the possession, but doesn't matter. You got it. You got an all-world goalie like that behind you. You're just trying to keep them at bay. I thought they did that for the most part. They had bodies on him, and incredible. Just another one of those little. You shake your head kind of milestones. Who would have thought when this season started, if they go into this game in Edmonton in January, that the 18-year-old number one overall pick would get 26 minutes and play 10 and a half minutes 5-on-5 against the best player in the world and not give up a goal. It's another feather in Matthew Schaefer's cap. And, we talk about Ilya's the runaway Vezina favorite right now for me. He should get some heart votes too if they keep this up. I see all the pundits online. You want to make it a race and make it interesting, where they're talking about Ivan Demidov in Montreal or Bennett Seneke out in Anaheim. This is a one-man race for Calder. If Matthew Schaefer keeps this up, finishes with 20 plus goals, let's say, and he's playing 25 minutes a night on a playoff team, if anybody else even gets another first place vote, it's blasphemy for me. So another good night for Schaefer too.
Yeah, you talk about how crazy it is that he's getting all those minutes, but his play demands it, right? He's given Patrick Waugh no choice. He's all right, kid, get in there. What else am I going to do, right? You belong, right?
Yeah, and you don't really have many other options. Adam Pelech has played. He played junior hockey with Connor McDavid. He certainly knows what to do. And there was a play early in that game where Pelech was met up with him in the neutral zone, and McDavid just ran him over and started a 2-on-1 the other way. So. Schaefer is the guy who's got the feet and the IQ, I think, to keep up with McDavid. If anybody could even be said to keep up with McDavid. And again, I think the shot share was something like 18-4. Shot attempts were 18-4 in the Oilers' favor when those two were on the ice against each other. But all that matters is the zeros at the end of the game, and the Islanders had the zero on Edmonton's side, and that's all that counts.
That is all that counts. So let's move on to the last one, Saturday against Calgary, 3 p.m. matinee. Obviously, historically not good for the Islanders, and this one turned out not well as well. 4-2 loss here. This was a messy one for the Islanders. They go down 4-0 by the midway point of the game. Poor decisions, especially I'll think about that turnover on one of the goals from Barzal, hanging onto the puck a little too long, tries to force a pass across the blue line there. It doesn't work out, goes back the other way, and turns out poorly. Power play goes 0 for 2, and overall just not a lot of threat on offense, at least for me. And the only, I guess, consolation is you get JGP with that goal right after the 4-0 goal, and a little milestone for Anders Lee. He gets his 300th with the empty net goal. Of course, not enough. They drop 4-2 to Calgary. This is another team that, obviously you look on paper that the Islanders should beat. But I guess if you look at it the other way, if they had to beat the teams they're supposed to and lost to the teams they weren't, they'd probably be right where they are anyway, right? 2-2-1.
Probably be a little bit more, feels a little bit more inspiring this way to be so good against some of the top teams. But why, you think if that game had been played, 24 hours later, Rasmus Andersson, just before we went on the air here, was traded to Vegas for a big haul of a couple of young defensemen and a couple of high draft picks. And he had an awesome game and clearly seemed to know that was going to be his last game in a Flames uniform, and went out accordingly for the home crowd. So they played that one today and he's not in the lineup, maybe we get a different result. But yeah, it was another game where the Islanders weren't consistent enough, especially in the top 9. High danger chances were about the same. I think looking on Clearside Hockey, Calgary had 17 total scoring chances and just 6 high danger chances and 4 goals. You can't have that happen. You got to be able to stop some of those chances. I think David Riddick had an off night. He's a former Flame. Maybe that he wasn't so good in that building. But it just was a little breakdowns, little failures all the way around, and When the offense is not, when this is a team in the Islanders, when they fall behind, even by a couple of goals, it's obviously going to be a struggle. When you fall behind by 4, even to a team that's out of the playoff picture and already starting to sell off in Calgary, it doesn't matter. You can't come back like that, especially with their offense going the way it is now. So just outside of Sorokin's magic performance in Edmonton, not kind of a week to forget here for the Islanders, which is the first one of those we've had in a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, with that in mind, Arthur, let's talk about it musically. What do you got for your anthem this week?
I went to one of my favorite rock bands of the current era, the last 10 years or so. These guys, White Reaper from Louisville. They got a great song called Headwind, and that seems to be what we're facing here with the Islanders on this road trip. 2-2-1 going into these last 2 stops in Vancouver and Seattle. I think I said it before the trip started. You go 500 on a trip like this, especially sitting with the Islanders you got to be happy. So really, if they take a win out of Vancouver, which is another team that's been struggling mightily. I think their last win was against the Islanders at UBS almost a month ago. And then Seattle, which, former coach Lane Lambert, little stare down there out in Seattle, and a team that doesn't score a lot either. So, these are both games where they could take some points. If they take both and you come home 4-2-1, this week is completely forgotten about. But it feels like between this week and kind of the start of the road trip last week, not where they need to be. And I know Bo Horvat is not joining them on this trip. And that was, they're just saying they're going to be cautious. Even our favorite general managers and coaches don't always tell us the truth with some of these injuries.
True.
So we're hopeful that we'll see Bo Horvat when they get back home. But having him not go out there, I'm sure the anticipation of him joining the lineup again would have been big for the team. So just a tough week. Great tune though, and everybody should check it out and put it on the old playlist for the season. White Reaper's a great band and great song for not such a great week.
I am adding it to the list. I have never heard of them, nor have I of the song, but I am looking forward to checking it out. All right, folks, that will do it for the opening segment here at Hockey Night New York. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to take a break. When we come back, it's time for What's on Tap.
Attention all artists, storytellers, and creators of all kinds. It's time to make your content stand out above the rest. And Floored Media is the place to make your visions become a reality. Maybe you want to elevate your podcast and add some video, or turn that novel you wrote into an audiobook. Or maybe you just need the right space to produce your daily vlog. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, Floored Media has the professional facilities, exceptional staff, and intimate atmosphere to breathe life into your creative passions at every step of the process.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Hockey Night in New York, and it's time for On the Line. That's right, I lied and said we're going to What's on Tap, but we're going on the line. No guest tonight, so we're going to change it up a little bit here. We're going to put Anthony Duclair on the line. He's heated up a little bit of late. He obviously had the natural hat trick last week. Potted a couple of goals this past week. Arthur, why don't you talk about Anthony Duclair while I try to bring you back into frame here, all right?
Hey, less of my face, the better for everybody. So, he's kind of rode the wave as a way a lot of the forwards have this year. It's, I think we talked about him a little bit last week coming off the 5-point game against Jersey. He's a guy who seemingly has accepted his role, understood that he's not going to be in the top 6 every night. He has been lately. Played some fourth line, been a healthy scratch. He was a healthy scratch those 2 games before the Devils game, before his big breakout game. And then, he got bumped up to the top 6, went a little cold in the first 2 games. Had that goal in Winnipeg to kind of kickstart the little mini rally that didn't stick. And then power play goal from a good spot, kind of that Bo Horvat spot. So, it's nice to see him, whatever was 5 goals in his last, 4 or 5 games. I think this is what they need from him. They're getting some okay secondary scoring behind Horvat and Barzal, Anders Lee, I think 13, Heineman, 14 or 15. But obviously if they're going to be adding anybody big, if there's going to be a major hockey type trade, I would imagine a winger in the top 6 or top 9 is probably the place that they'd look. So I think if you're Anthony Duclair, and even with a couple years left on his deal, you got to make yourself feel noted. You got to be noticed. You got to make yourself valuable to this coach who, he hasn't always gotten along with over the time here with the Islanders, and to this GM who is not the guy who signed you to this free agent contract. So I think it's been kind of a real up and down season for him, but I think he's made himself reasonably valuable. I don't know if Bo Horvat comes back, if you see him stay in that top 6, top line role, but
Sure.
certainly he's done enough to stay in a top 9 role and stay out of that fourth line 8-9 minute role that he was playing a lot and not really doing a whole lot with.
Right, for sure. And you actually had noted Shabunov as a guy who we can talk about too. He's been in and out of the lineup. What have you seen from him so far or lately?
Just inconsistency. I think his size really demands that he play, give 100% effort game every night. And I don't know that, he's a lot more skill than grit. And when the team is not functioning well offensively, and he's kind of down in that third line role, I don't know how effective he can be. And it sounds like he's coming out tomorrow with Max Siplikov coming back in a third line spot. So, I think it's not just the fans that are noticing this. Clearly, the team is noticing it, that he's just not doing enough. And obviously his first year in North America, there's going to be some inconsistencies. He was injured in training camp, which I'm sure set him back quite a bit. But he's certainly shown some really good skill flashes, but they just don't seem to have a game right now where they're going to accentuate everybody's skill up and down the lineup. It's got to be some more simplicity. It's got to be a little bit more straight ahead hockey, and I guess Siplikov can provide that. I feel like if Siplikov isn't able to deliver in this next couple of games, if they keep him in for both of them, that makes me start to think a little bit more that Matthew Darche or Patrick Waugh sending the message to Matthew Darche that maybe we need somebody else. Maybe we need a middle 6 winger who's got a little bit more skill, a little bit more speed, a little bit more stick-to-itiveness than maybe some of these guys have had. I think when we don't want to point the finger at these guys that are healthy scratches necessarily. I mean, Jonathan Drouin has really not provided a ton. He's got a few assists, but I think he's got 3 goals so far this year, including the first one of the season way back when. So I think they just need someone who's a bit more of a straight ahead guy who's going to drive the net, put some pucks on net, do a little bit more of what Kyle Palmieri did. And I don't know how many of those guys are out there, even in the rental market. Whether they could give up, a second round pick or a third round pick or something like that for a guy to just sort of take a flyer on him, change things up a little bit. But I think for Shabunov, this hopefully is a wake up call where he goes out of the lineup. I don't know how long that'll be. And, maybe a wake up call for Siplikov too, has just really had a nightmarish season. Clearly, not on the wrong side of Patrick Waugh's dividing line, where he seems to be the first guy who gets yanked if something goes wrong or sits out or taking some bad penalties, and not really providing any sort of offense. So I mean they're searching for answers right now up front, and Duclair seems to be part of the solution. Shabunov maybe more part of the problem right now, so they've got to find some answers.
Yeah, and speaking of finding answers, I mean, as we creep further and further into the season here, the Islanders are still maintaining that second spot in the Metropolitan Division. Do you think Darche is maybe starting to angle a little more towards adding here, or do you think it's more of a wait and see and maybe just not even do anything regardless?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of paths they can go down, and I feel like, mentioned it, Rasmus Andersson from Calgary on the move, that sort of maybe clears the path for Dougie Hamilton to be traded from Jersey. Maybe that starts to loosen some things up in the division. Obviously, what the Rangers did this week, sending out another letter, kind of waving the white flag, getting ready to trade Artemi Panarin, who's not coming to the Islanders, unfortunately. But
Probably not.
Can't see any universe or any multiverse where that could happen. So, I think there's going to be some changes in that division. And, even the Flyers, who looked horrible against the Rangers the other night, and they're starting to sink down, maybe they're going to start to go back to that plan that they've had the last couple of years of selling off. So the Islanders have to figure out, can we make the playoffs even if we're not going to buy, in any sort of meaningful way? Are they going to be in a position to sell? Probably not. I don't think they're going to fall that far off. But does Matthew Darche feel the need to go for it in any way? I mentioned it on our Tri-State Hockey podcast. I'm sure, guys like Tom Boyle have asked many times in our questions, Bruin, about who they could add. Jordan Kyrou is the name I keep coming back to, and I don't even know if that's worth it. It's a big cost for the Islanders. That to me is, you're trading Cole Yzerman, you're trading one of your first round picks next year. You're probably trading a third piece too for a guy who's got, I believe, 5 years left at a decent number, and as former 35 goal scorer, as a top line winger. So that to me is the sort of hockey trade, the sort of like, we're not just doing it for now, we're doing it for the future move that I could see the Islanders making if Matthew Darche can kind of pull that off. But failing that, when you're talking about rentals or sort of stopgap type guys, I think the jury's still out on whether the Islanders will do that. They do have an opportunity here. You do have your goalie putting up one of the best goaltending seasons in Islanders history. You do have the incredible, great vibes and incredible skill of an 18-year-old defenseman who's, set the league on fire. And you've got Bo Horvat, if he can stay healthy, who's an Olympian and was on pace for 45 goals before he got hurt. So you've got some things going in your favor that you can say, that Matthew Darche can take to Scott Malkin and John Ledecky and John Collins and say, here are the things in the pro column for us to make a move or make a couple of moves and try to go for it in a small way. And then the cons really are, what did we think this season was going to be? Did we feel like this was a season to go for it, even if things were good? Probably not. It's more of an evaluation season. So I think we're still kind of, we're still a bit at that fork in the road here. I don't think that precludes them from making some small ads, and I'm sure with the news that our old pal Nick Leddy is on waivers from San Jose today. And I don't even want to say anything about it now because I'm sure 90% of the questions in Questions Brewing will be about Nick Leddy reunions. So we'll talk about it more later. But I think moves like that, if you can make them, obviously a waiver claim or giving up a 4th or 5th round pick, those are no cost, just it's a scratch off lottery ticket. You see if it'll work and fill a need. But yeah, as far as up front goes, I think you have to do a little bit more scouring and sort of figure out what's going to work. Because if you just throw another middle six guy who's on an expiring contract into this group, whether Kiefer Sherwood in Vancouver's having a great season, he's a pending unrestricted free agent. If you just add another guy, like they have a bunch of guys, I don't know if that's the thing that's going to propel them to first place in the division or the Eastern Conference Final or a Stanley Cup final. So I think we're still in wait and see mode. We've got a couple weeks until the Olympic roster freeze. After that, another week plus or so till the trade deadline. Which is still a lot of time considering outside of this big move today, there really haven't been a lot of trades.
All fair, Arthur. Now, before we move on from on the line here, let's check in with you. Where are you on the make the playoff meter here for the New York Islanders?
If I had to put a percentage on it, I'd say they're at probably 70%. Like as I'm just listing off those teams, you look in the division, and that's not the be all end all, but Philly was up there before. Now they're dropping out of it. The Rangers, were kind of a threat, if you can say that, and now they've waved the white flag. Jersey's down there in 15th now. What are they going to do? Columbus just changed coaches. They're still down at the bottom. So that's half the division right there. They're ahead of Washington. Washington hasn't really gotten any traction so far this season the way they did last year. Pittsburgh has won a few games in the last month or so. We're still out, the jury's still out on them. So there's just not a lot there's a lot of cushion below them. So I feel like they put themselves in a good spot. They're not going to massively sell off. They're not going to throw in the towel, even if there's more injuries or if they lose a few more games. They're in a good position. I don't know that they can catch Carolina, but with Sorokin playing the way that he is, I feel pretty confident they're going to make it.
I love it. Love to hear that positivity here at Hockey Night in New York from Mr. Arthur Staples. So that will do it for On the Line, presented by Razor, Kniff, and Launstein, attorneys at law, ready to fight when your good name is on the line. So we're going to take one more break, and then for real, we're going to go to What's on Tap.
When in need of representation, it's not always easy to know where to turn. But whether you've been accused of a crime or need to go to court, Razor, Kniff, and Launstein, attorneys at law, have you covered with over 100 years of combined experience. With offices in Manhattan, Mineola, and Suffolk, Razor, Kniff, and Launstein is an award-winning law firm specializing in criminal defense with additional expertise in business debt settlement, trust and estates, personal injury, and more. At Razor Kniff and Lowenstein, you'll have direct access to your attorney 24/7. Because more attentive service translates to better outcomes. You deserve legal representatives with national recognition and a strong track record of delivering results. And Razor Kniff and Lowenstein are ready to fight for you. Call 212-LAW-1500 or go to razorandkniff.com to schedule a free, no-risk consultation today. That's RAISERANDKENNIFF.com. Razor Kniff and Lowenstein. We win cases because we make your problems our problems.
Hey there, welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for What's on Tap here at Hockey Night in New York, powering through this Sunday evening here on January 18th. That's right, the remote special here at Hockey Night in New York. All right, Arthur, lots of games ahead of us. Let's go What's on Tap. Let's start with tomorrow, 10 p.m., Cellar Dwellers, the Vancouver Canucks. The Islanders lost to these guys last time, so anything can happen. As we noted before, they have been struggling against the bottom feeders in this league. What do the Islanders have to do to get 2 points in British Columbia?
Just grind it out. I'm sure Ilya Sorokin will be in net. Like we said, Max Shabanov comes out. Max Siplikov goes in. The Canucks seem to be on the cusp of selling off, and we're kind of, I guess now we're within a couple of weeks of that Olympic roster freeze. A lot of the people around the league, the insiders or whoever, talking about is kind of like a first trade deadline that teams are going to want to sort some things out before this. And if Vancouver has not made a decision about which direction they're going, then their front office is not paying much attention because they are down in the dumps, 32nd in the league by a pretty fair margin. Like I said, their last win was when they, swept through the tri-state area after the Quinn Hughes trade and beat the Islanders in pretty handy fashion. But they're in a very different spot now. That I think there's a lot of hope that's gone. They're even talking about Elias Pettersson as possibly being on the trade block. So, Connor Garland, some of their heart and soul core guys, I think they're talking about possibly selling off. So this is a team in pretty big disarray right now. The Islanders need to take advantage, not by opening things up and making things loose the way that they did in Edmonton, but being very determined, straightforward, simple, win a game when there's 10 high danger chances total both ways, win it 2-1, win it 2-0, whatever you need to do. It'd be nice to see them get back to that defense first style that they had for, kind of from mid-November on to, January 1, where they really looked like a team that was committed to playing defense, playing the right way, can still being aggressive and getting up the ice the way that they want to in Patrick Waugh's system, but taking care of their own end, not leaving their goalie to make a bunch of big saves every night. And really, what have we seen in their 2 wins on this road trip? We've seen Ilya Sorokin steal those 4 points. He did it in Mini with the great third period. He did it the whole game in Edmonton. So I think I'd love to see a game that they win. They take the lead, they hold the lead, and give up, 17 to 23 shots, maybe 5 or 6 high danger chances, and just sort of give their goalie a break. This guy's been working really hard this year.
Yeah, for real. For real. And, even like looking at the Calgary game, like I thought they started out okay. And even when they went down 1-0, I was like, okay, they'll come back. They'll take this one. And then they just kind of faded out. So to your point, I think they need just a good start here. Just look at themselves, say, hey, look, this is a team we're supposed to beat. Let's, take it to them here. Let's get the first goal. Hey, maybe 2. And, exert some control over a team like that and kind of get back in their winning ways, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, moving on to Wednesday, the Lane Lambert reunion, head coach of the Seattle Kraken. These guys are third place in the Pacific Division with 51 points. They have lost their last 2 outings. Does Lambert have them playing the same style over there in Seattle?
They even have less firepower, I think, than the Islanders did when Lane was here. So they do not generate a lot. They do not give up a lot. They're a top 5 team in high danger chances against. They've got Philippe Grubauer, who's kind of seized the net back from Joey Decourt as their number 1 goalie, playing really well. So they're just kind of one of those teams that to me, you can't look ahead of any game the way that the Islanders have played against some of the bottom 10 teams in the league. So Vancouver's still an important game tomorrow, and I hope that they can come out with 2 points. But regardless of whether they do or not, cannot be looking past Seattle, the last stop of that trip. This is a team that, they were just in Madison Square Garden and in Newark last week, and you saw if people watched that game against the Rangers got 2 quick goals on them, and probably, that was before the letter. Rangers maybe thought, okay, we'll finally have a laugher. And Seattle just kind of grinded their way back into it and scored a couple of hard-working goals and ended up winning that one. And it was a similar low-event game in Jersey that the Devils won in overtime. So this is, that's going to be a game you got to work. And, that to me is more of a hallmark of what Lane Lambert learned and did as associate coach for so many years under Barry Trotz, that you're not going to have an easy night against them. Obviously, the goaltending certainly helps, but they have a lot of plumbers. They have a lot of stick-to-it guys. So I think the Islanders need to recognize that as fast as they want to play and as aggressive as they like to be, and obviously they have Matthew Schaefer and Matthew Barzal, and Seattle does not. But they won't have Bo Horvat, and who they do have is not going to give them a huge edge if they start to play trading chances. So again, these are 2 games that are very winnable as long as they're committed to doing things the right way. Like you said, get off to a good start, get a goal or 2 early on, and just, be strong after that and don't bend.
Yes, absolutely. Moving on to Saturday, another matinee for the Islanders. That is a 1 p.m. start back at UBS Arena. The road trip will be over, but they're playing against a team that hasn't lost since about 2023, it feels like. This recent streak that they've been on here, unbelievable. Buffalo Sabres, it seems like this resurrection might actually be for real. It's like late enough in the season where they've finally figured it out, and maybe they'll actually stick with it. What do you think?
Yeah. And it's interesting to see. It's kind of a great illustration of how crazy the East has been this year, that it's 14 of 15 or 15 of 17 that they've won in the last month plus. They changed general managers. Jarmo Kekalainen is in there. Mark Bergevin joined him. Bergevin was almost came in as one of the front office members with Matthew Darsh, but ended up staying in LA and now going to Buffalo. A couple of veteran guys who've taken over there. And even with the wins and even with the incredible resurgence, and they've got sellouts now, and hockey's, the Bills just got eliminated, so hockey is back to being number 1 in Buffalo. They're still just in that wild card mix. It's not like they've shot up the standings. It's just everybody seems to get points every night, especially in that Atlantic division. So, and I think you add in the other factor of Alex Tuck, pending UFA. If he tells them he doesn't want to stay or they're not able to negotiate with him, interested to see what they do with him over the next 6 weeks or so. To my mind, he'd be a very coveted guy to trade for, as long as you could maybe talk about an extension. Certainly a guy who's an incredible power forward on the right side, a few years younger than the current power forward the Islanders have in Anders Lee. But a guy who's going to command whatever 10, 11 million per year on his next deal, and has been a pretty consistent 25, 30 goal scorer even through some of those bad years in Buffalo. So I'm interested to see, if they can keep all the noise down. There's always some noise in Buffalo, no matter what's going on.
Right.
So yeah, and again, that it's a matinee, which the Islanders have not been good at, and it's the first one home after a 2-week road trip. I know they've got an extra day in between, but man, those are always a grind in the NHL. I mean, even if it's just a 3 or 4 game trip, is when you're changing time zones, you come back, they've got sleep science, they've got nutrition, they've got all these things. And yet the results over the last couple decades of me covering hockey always seem to be the same. There's always guys get back to their own beds, to girlfriends, to wives, to kids, and suddenly you're just a little too relaxed after being away for too long.
Right.
And especially a day game on a Saturday, that to me is a real watch out kind of game, no matter who they be playing. So I hope, however they finish this road trip this week, that is a game that as soon as they get home, they circle and kind of remind themselves,
go to bed.
Hey, we got to show up for this one. If it means staying in a hotel for a night, no, I wouldn't advocate that. But you gotta remind yourselves that these games are all important now. We're kind of into that 50 game mark where whether it's the trade deadline, the Olympic break obviously is kind of an interesting cutoff, and then the trade deadline, and then it's the sprint to the end. You gotta you got to bank those points. So even if it's going to be a schedule loss, as they kind of call it, you got to be able to pull a point or two out of that one.
Yeah, no doubt. And you talk about Buffalo's place in the standings. They have the same 57 points as the Islanders now with one less game played. Did not see that coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just look at the three teams that are kind of sitting top three in the Atlantic. They're starting to be some separation between those teams in the Metro, which is interesting. Tampa, whatever, won 11, 12 in a row, or I think 13 to 14. Really impressive run for them. Detroit battling it out with Ottawa tonight. They've been really impressive. Montreal, again, a team that started off really hot, dipped a little bit. They've come back. Boston has been a bit of a surprise this year.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of teams over there that are putting up some big numbers in terms of the points relative to the Metro, and I think you don't start to worry about it yet. You always try to look up instead of down, but the Islanders lose, if they end up not getting any points out of these next two and come home, then suddenly you're in that danger zone where if the fourth team in the Metro jumps them, they don't fall to a wild card. They fall to about 11th in the conference. So, if I'm not big on negative reinforcement for teams. I think everybody always wants to look forward and say, oh, we're only 5 points behind Carolina for first, as opposed to looking over your shoulder and saying we're only 5 points from about 13th.
For sure. Well, we're bumping next week's show further into the week, so we got a couple more games to cover here in What's on Tap. So let's move on to Monday, the 26th. The Islanders go into Philadelphia. You mentioned them earlier. That's a 7 p.m. game. They've lost their last 5, as you said, finally dropping down the standings here. They're 6 points out of the playoffs. Still a threat, though. Good young players. Tocchet seems to have them playing above maybe we expected, before the last week or two. And now this is a team that maybe is finally facing reality a little bit, huh?
Yeah. I think losing Dan Vladar to injury, who was their kind of surprise number one goalie, they went out against the Rangers the other day. Rangers coming off that announcement where they basically surrendered the season and then come out and just pumped them for 6 in the first, 30 minutes of the game. Philly's kind of in disarray right now. And I wonder, they've been very determined to kind of stay the course in terms of sell, and get rid of what we can get rid of. And then they kind of had this fool's gold start to the season. They didn't have a lot of regulation wins, but they were putting up some points and sitting in a playoff spot. They turn around and sign Christian Dvorak, who they picked up on a 1-year deal. They signed him to a 5-year extension. Kind of head-scratching move there for me, and a team that is not yet where they need to be. Matvei Michkov, who was their super talented top 10 pick from a couple of years ago. Flyer fans were angry at John Tortorella for the way that he used him as a rookie. Now Rick Tocchet's even harsher on him than Torts was. So I just will kind of wonder what direction they're going in, and I think the players might be wondering it too now, because you see not just the losses piling up, but they're getting a little ugly. Losing to the Rangers that way was they look confused out there. So I'll be interested to see. Obviously that's 9 days away. This could be a busy stretch this next week. So we'll see if the Flyers look a little different by the 26th. If they've turned things around, or if they've I don't know if they're going to put out a statement like the Rangers did, but maybe they'll be waving the white flag too and starting to sell as well.
Yes. Well, speaking of the letter to the fans, the Rangers, Wednesday, the 28th, 7 p.m. start. That is at UBS Arena, dead last in the East. And once again, a nice little letter penned to the fans and to social media at large from Chris Drury, letting everybody know that they are waving the white flag and going to sell. And very strangely, just letting everyone also know that they're not going to sign Panarin, which I thought interesting. But all that aside, Islander Ranger games, that stuff means nothing. This is a game the Islanders have to be focused for to get 2 points.
Definitely. And that dead cat bounce is a real thing too. That once the team is officially out of it, or the deadline passes and you sold off, you're going to sell off. The guys that are left, you saw it if you watched that Ranger Philly game on Saturday. I saw it. The weight is off. Some of those guys know that they're going to be gone. Yeah. Some know that they're going to be here and that the team is going to look different. But everybody knows the landscape, and I feel like once you know the landscape, you can play a little bit freer. You can be a little bit better. Because you're either playing for yourself for a job for next year, either with the Rangers or somewhere else, or you're playing to show some pride in the uniform, which can be a really motivating thing for a professional athlete in terms of the tension of trying to make the playoffs and do all the things you need to do. And Then once that's gone and you're just playing for pride or for fun or whatever, just to kind of show that you still belong, it works. Trust me. Covered the Islanders a long time. I've seen it happen many seasons where they're officially out of it, and suddenly they turn around and win 5 or 6 in a row and damage their draft spot.
Yes.
So, yeah, those Ranger games, especially after something like this, and I know it'll be a couple weeks after it, but you still got to be on guard, and I would imagine Igor Shesterkin could be back by then too, which will help them a lot. And obviously he's going to be very motivated. He's got the Vezina Trophy right now. If Ilya Sorokin keeps on this pace, they'll be tied 1-1 in Vezinas. I'm sure he wants to beat his old friend. So yeah, it's like you said, you throw that stuff out. There's enough guys that have been on both sides for a long time. They've played each other when the Islanders are down and the Rangers are up, vice versa, when they've both been out of it. So there's going to be some good motivation on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. And they won't have long to think about it after the first one, because back-to-back, they go to the Garden the following night on Thursday. That's where our next show will be, at Borelli's Tap Room in Long Beach. Another pregame watch party here, show beforehand with Arthur and I. Then we're going to have a little watch along there as the Islanders take on the Rangers. Hopefully that will be a celebratory affair of 4 points being taken from the Rangers. We shall see. But come on down to Borelli's Tap Room in Long Beach on Thursday before the Islanders-Ranger game. Going to be a lot of fun, and we will have, like I said, your pregame show there. So come on down. And that will do it for What's on Tap. It is now time to talk about heroes. All right. Okay, Arthur, I'm going to give you the reins here. Why don't you go first? What do you got for us?
Well, I didn't go the obvious with Sorokin. I feel like I've made him my hero about 17 times already this season.
Which is
fine. I went with Matthew Schaefer, and I feel like, he produced a goal late in the game in Winnipeg. Wasn't a great night for him. I didn't think the Calgary game was a great night for him, but going to go back to that Edmonton game, the only bright spot of the week, where, again, him being the guy on the road, you would have thought going into the season, or even at any point in the season, even with the start that he had to the year, that Patrick Roy's goal would be to keep him away from Connor McDavid. You don't want your 18-year-old defenseman's confidence to be dented by having to face off against the best, most dynamic player in the world. And here we are, and Matthew Schaefer is the guy who's got that matchup, handling it as best as he could. Like I said, they got crushed in terms of possession and shot attempts for and against. But you liked what you saw from him out there, which is no goals given up, and kind of he wasn't ceding much ground to Connor McDavid in that line. It was obviously a team effort to keep. I think McDavid had a 20-game point streak coming into that game that was snapped.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like we love to see the dazzling plays and the end-to-end rushes and the highlight reel stuff that we've seen from Schaefer. But I think when you get down to it, the thing that's going to make him a really important figure for this franchise going forward is playing heavy minutes against the league's best teams. They haven't had a number one defenseman like that in a long, long time. Probably before matchups were even really a thing. If you really want to get down to it, I'd say probably a guy like Adrian Aucoin or Roman Hamrlik way back in the early 2000s were guys that you deploy for, Peter Laviolette was using them half the game regardless, because just the way their decor was structured. So obviously they were getting the heavy minutes. They were getting almost all the minutes. And Schaefer, to me, is built in this mode of, I'm going to be out there against the best guys. And it's not just out there to like cross-check him 12 times and get off the ice and keep him away from the puck. It's to do what Matthew Schaefer does and kind of negate and blunt what Connor McDavid can do to you. So I feel like we're going to see this more and more in the back half of the season. Whoever it is, if it's Sebastian Aho in Carolina, if it's Nikita Kucherov in Tampa, the big boys in Florida, if the Islanders have any meaningful games against those guys left, it's an eye opener to see such a young guy embrace that challenge and kind of just shake it off and be like, whatever. And I just feel like his personality is so mature and confident in his game and in what the team is doing that even if he gets lit up, I don't think he'd care very much. I don't think it would affect him that much. He just seems to be able to kind of shrug off whether it's a a point drought or a bad play or whatever, he's just back out there next shift and doing the same things that he's been doing. It's incredible to watch, and I hope that he continues to do it for as long as he's here, which is for many years. And I think those matchups are going to be so much fun to watch. It's gonna, we're going to have to see. It feels like a lot of the really dynamic young stars in the league are mostly in the West, whether it's Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard. I'm sure there'll be some more coming up in the East, but whoever it is, that's going to be Matthew Schaefer's challenge, in addition to all the other great stuff he does. So he had the goal, and he's back on pace for 20 goals, which would be quite a remarkable feat. But to me, the biggest impact he had this week was being able to play that much against Connor McDavid and live to tell the tale.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, but just his ability to let anything, just roll off his shoulders, right? And to me, that's one of the most impressive things, especially because of his age, especially because this is his first year in the league. And you'd forgive most players for getting out there and, letting the mental side of the game get to them, right? Playing with men, a boy against men, you're just kind of feeling your way out here. And just from jump, he's been like, nah, I'm good. This is my game. This is how I play. And you guys are going to adapt to me, right? And even when he's had his maybe a few mistakes here and there, rookie mistakes, whatever it is, like you said, it just seems like he forgets about it immediately, and he's just ready to go and play his game the next time he hops on the ice. So I think that's just one of the most, aside from all of his talent and all his abilities, it's just amazing and so important that he's able to do that, because he's only going to become a steadier player as he goes on here. And the fact that he can just, forget about a shift, immediately and play great the next one is just outstanding for him.
Yeah, and you hope, and I'm sure it will be this way if he keeps this trajectory up, that when he's out against Connor McDavid's going to say, "Oh crap, I got Matthew Schaefer out here against me. Yeah. I got to be on my toes, because this guy's going to blow right by me and make me look silly." So, I think that's when we talk about the mashups, whether it's McDavid versus Cale Makar, or, Makar versus Kucherov or somebody like that, when it's a D versus a forward, you always think of it as the D has to defend, and he's going to just sort of like withstand whatever the super talented forward's going to bring. And Makar has kind of turned that on his head, and there's a few guys over the years that have turned that on its head. And Matthew Schaefer is on the way to being one of those guys who's going to make opposing forwards and opposing D notice when he's on the ice and prepare for when he's on the ice. And that is going to be, just to even say that about an Islanders defenseman is a pretty special thing.
Special and still weird for me, Arthur, but I am eating it up, and I am enjoying it. Well, absolutely excellent stuff on Matthew Schaefer. I could have went Sorokin, but as you've noted, you went with him a lot of times, and I've kind of had this theme now where I'm picking guys that I hope it kind of encourages them, subconsciously to get
Good
going here.
By you. I like it.
Yes, exactly. So I went with Richie, just alone for that magnificent pass that he made to Duclair on the power play. We talked about it earlier, but he fooled me. I thought he was going to try to stuff it. As soon as he got that puck, I thought he was going to do the Paul Mary move, right? Turn around and try to stuff it in. But he makes that no-look behind the back pass. It didn't look like anybody else was expecting it either. Right to the tape for Duclair. Duclair finishes there. And I'm excited about this kid. He's kind of been slow on the score sheet, as we've noted throughout the season. But I think over the course of it as well, he's kind of shown us, his abilities, his poise as well, and his confidence rising with this team. And I think he's going to end up being a pretty important part of the squad.
Yeah, and it's, you like seeing him get opportunities like that, because not just for now and helping the team win, but you're seeing him play in a lot of different situations, whether it's even fourth line, third line, mostly little second line, getting some power play time, getting maybe down the road, he could get some penalty killing time as well, because you need to see a lot of different stuff from him. There's an inflection point, a decision point coming this summer, most likely not coming before the trade deadline, on JG Pageau. Centers are in real short supply. JG Pageau is probably going to get a decent contract offer if he hits the open market. I imagine that, at his age, the sweetener was maybe a fourth year or even a fifth year or six, kind of close to what he's making now at $6 million. Do the Islanders pay that because the reliability of JG Pageau, even as he's reaching an age where his skills are going to decline, as naturally all guys do? Or do you say we're going to, we've seen enough from Cal Ritchie to feel confident that he is going to be our number 3 center, maybe even a number 2 center when Matthew Barzal plays up on the top line. So you want to see him put a little bit more on his plate, have some decisions to make, be in some difficult situations, as long as it's not affecting the outcome of the game in a negative way. This is what you want, because you have to see as much as you can see from Cal Ritchie to make that decision, not just on JG Pageau, but on where Cal Ritchie is going to play next year in the lineup. So you'd like to see him be in those spots and the confidence to make the call, slapping his stick on the ice. And I think, like you said, Connor Ingram, the Oilers goalie, thought he was doing it because he slid all the way over and he just drops it back, and Ingram's way out of position. And you could see Connor Ingram kind of look up to the sky, probably thinking like, who was that kid that made that move? I don't know that kid.
64?
Who's 64? So yeah, it puts a smile on your face for now, and you also know that those are important little spots for down the road too.
No doubt. Great stuff, Arthur. So there you have it, folks. There are your heroes of the week, Matthew Schaefer and Mr. Callum Ritchie. So we will move on now, as I will tell you all about our friends at Isles Fix. That's right, Islanders Country. Get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the only Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at ilesfix.substack.com. So there you have it for Isles Fix, and now it's time for Questions Brewing.
It's time for Questions Brewing. So go ahead, ask us a question.
That's right. I'm looking a little frozen there on the screen, but I assure you I'm still here and I'm still speaking. So just get used to that image for a moment. But it's time for Questions Brewing, ladies and gentlemen. Arthur, are you ready for some questions?
I am ready. I feel a little lost without Ed guiding us here, but I'm ready to go.
Yes. I'm sorry. You're going to have to settle for me.
No. Not settling. Just got to adapt.
Fair enough. Well, before the show, Chris from Long Island 803 asked, my question is, we know Cole Yzerman is a top prospect because of his shot and goal-scoring ability, but what are his weaknesses that could stop him from making it in the NHL?
Well, I think there's some obvious ones. I think being more of a consistent player away from the puck. I feel like some of the things that are talked about with him are the things that were talked about with Oliver Wahlstrom coming out of his amateur ranks, that a guy who's a great shooter, a really gifted goal scorer, but skating needs a little bit of work. The awareness needs a little bit of work, and the kind of commitment needs a little bit of work. And I think he started off the season really well, got hurt, and he's a bit of a setback since then. And BU not having a terribly successful season this year, which is a bit of a surprise. They're usually a perennial powerhouse. I think if judging by some of the rankings at the season ended today, they wouldn't be in the NCAA tournament right now, which is a huge surprise. So, they have time to turn that around still. But I feel like, people that we've talked to, even, we had Chris Peters on the show earlier in the season, and anyone else that you kind of see who does these amateur rankings. I don't know if anyone's willing to commit to him turning pro after this year. I'm sure that's what Cole Yzerman would want, but that's obviously going to be a conversation with his agent, with Jay Pandolfo, the BU coach, with Matthew Darsh, with the Islanders development staff. So I'm interested to see where it goes at the end of the season. I think the injury set him back a little bit, and certainly he's the attitude and the goal scoring skill would be super welcome on this team and in the pro organization. But I don't think it's going to be a seamless path from where he is now to the NHL without a little bit of work.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, moving on to Bobbers66. Arthur, who are the hockey writers that will vote for the Calder in the tri-state area? Also, have you voted in the past?
I have been a Professional Hockey Writers Association voter for a long time, ever since I got back into covering hockey back in 2010. So we'll see about this year. Different job. Doing this job, I feel like qualifies me to vote still, but we'll have to see what the determination is. There's always there's kind of a set number from each chapter. I think I'm part of the Islanders chapter this year. So I think if the people that you read, like Andrew Gross and Ethan Sears, are voters. Molly Walker from the Post covers the Rangers, is definitely a voter. A couple of my old colleagues from The Athletic are voters. So you try to get a good cross section from the beat reporters of all 32 teams and some national people and some TV people up in Canada. So it's a good mix. I think it ends up being a couple hundred people, maybe a little bit less than 200. So like I said earlier, this is to me is such a no-brainer for Matthew Schaefer, and obviously people will have their regional biases.
Sure.
People up in Montreal that see Ivan Demidov play every night will probably say he is worthy of a first place Calder vote.
Right.
I think what you do, I can tell you my process through voting. I look at basic stats, goals, assists. Time on ice is a big one for me. It's hard to compare defensemen versus forwards. For me, if you have a rookie defenseman, whether it's Matthew Schaefer or whoever, who's playing major minutes on a good team, and then you start to dig down into some of the metrics, possession, expected goals for and against when they're on the ice, quality of competition, if you can kind of find that part out. Because if a guy is playing 9 minutes a night and is putting up gaudy numbers but doesn't kill penalties or doesn't play on the power play as a forward, is that really being kind of an impactful rookie to me? Not necessarily is how I would judge that. So, to me, the difficulty of being a defenseman at any age, but being a rookie defenseman versus a rookie forward, where you can be a lot more sheltered, you can kind of control the opponent who you're playing against a little bit better. That puts Matthew Schaefer ahead of all those guys, regardless, even if the points were a little bit more skewed. But also, 20 goal scoring defenseman as an 18-year-old. To me, that if you're just even looking at the basic stats, that says, okay, that guy's got my vote. Oh, and also the Islanders made the playoffs. Yeah. And he's playing 26 minutes a night. Yeah. Like you're checking a lot of boxes with Matthew Schaefer that you can't check with some of those other guys as good as seasons as they're having.
Well, the good news here is, Arthur, I don't need to add to that because that was a phenomenal response. Bobber66 once again, with the Islanders giving up so many high danger chances every game, is this club a Fugazi playoff team?
I again go back to my buddy Steve Valiquette and his Clear Sight Hockey and some of the data that he's crunched over the years. I think maybe going back a decade or so, a little bit before he started doing the site and working with teams on that data. If you were in the top 5, I believe, in high danger chances against, so you're among the 5 teams that give up the fewest high danger chances against at even strength, you have the best chance of winning a Stanley Cup, best chance of advancing in the playoffs. Right now, the Islanders are 22nd, last I checked, which was earlier today. So they have some work to do. It doesn't mean they're not a playoff team. I think there's teams that have been in the 20s that have made the playoffs. But to your point, Bobbers, yeah, they don't look like a team that can go far, that could win 2 or 3 rounds playing defense the way that they're playing, because you're going to play Ilya Sorokin every other night in the playoffs. He's going to get tired. Guys get tired. You have to figure that part out. And you have to be able to defend better in the playoffs. It's tighter. Sometimes, especially in the early rounds, they call a lot of penalties, so the penalty kill has to be on point. The power play has to be able to succeed. You have to win your shifts 5-on-5 to be able to win in the playoffs consistently. And those Islander teams in the early 2020s and late 2010s, despite the fact that they didn't score a ton and were always kind of looked at as not a skilled team, they ground out some shifts. Those teams forechecked hard. They possessed the puck a lot.
Yes.
And this Islanders team needs to possess the puck more. I agree. I feel pretty confident that they're a playoff team. And I feel pretty confident that this may be one of those anomaly seasons in the East where it doesn't matter if they're 22nd or 25th in high danger chances against. The East is so weird looking now. You just don't know. And injuries play a huge part when you get them. Whatever trades are made before the deadline, whoever, goes for it or sells or whatever. I think you could end up winning a couple rounds just by having the better goalie for 7 games. So I think maybe 2 things can be true that seem different. That I think they can do it, but I also think they need to be better to be able to do it.
Fair enough. And look, I mean, I know it's cliche, but it's so true, Arthur. And especially to your point with this Eastern Conference this season is, if you got a hot goalie at the right time in the playoffs, it really can take you far. And it would even be a little reminiscent of those Barry Trotz teams that went far in that, you take advantage of either solid and or goaltending through a playoff series and just have opportunistic scoring. I mean, that's what they were just so good at, was they weren't necessarily putting up 4, 5, 6 goals a night, but when they did score, it was usually more than the other team, whether it was 2-1, 3-1, whatever it was. And this is a team who's proven capable of doing that, right? So if Sorokin's still playing the way he's playing now, by the time they get to April, they might be able to squeeze out a round or two. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, moving on. It would not be Hockey Night in New York without a fun question from Mr. Thomas Boyle, 1483. Who will win the Hart Trophy, Sorokin or Schaefer?
I'm sad that we couldn't be at Bagel Boss today to have Tom hang out
Right?
with us. Well, I got to say that again. These are also my fellow PHWA voters, and I feel like a goalie winning the Hart Trophy is a very unique circumstance, obviously. And last year was very unique because I think I may have mentioned it on the show. Connor Hellebuck did not deserve it. If you looked at the metrics, I understand his raw save percentage and the way that Winnipeg cruised to the President's Trophy told you he was incredibly valuable for sure. But in terms of the underlying metrics, goals saved above expectation, where a metric that measures obviously the quality of the chances that you're giving up and how good you are at stopping those quality chances. He wasn't even first in the league in that category. Darcy Kemper had him beat out by a little bit. Ilya Sorokin has got I think he's at plus 22 or 23 goals saved above expectation. Connor Hellebuck won the Hart Trophy at plus 19 last year with a team that was an exceptional team. I thought some other guys on that team deserved a little bit more love for awards than maybe Connor Hellebuck did for the Hart. But, you have a big name. You play in Canada, where a lot of our voters are. Sometimes those things happen. People get a little carried away. So I think Ilya Sorokin is earning Hart Trophy votes. I think once you get down to it, you look at McDavid, who's always in the running because he's the best player on earth. Right. I think you look at Macklin Celebrini, who's an attractive candidate because he's having an incredible season.
Oh, yeah.
And the Sharks could make the playoffs. So you know how valuable he is to that team. And then, there's Nikita Kucherov, who to me is all year in, year out is an amazing candidate, especially this year with Tampa playing as well as they're playing. And obviously there's Nathan McKinnon, who I think is going to lose some votes because Colorado is so dominant as a team that you don't say, boy, they really need this guy. Do they, they'd still be pretty good without him.
Right.
So, Sorokin's squarely in the mix. If he continues on this path and they make the playoffs and he's at, say, plus 35 or plus 40 goals saved above expectation, those are Dominik Hasek numbers. Like, I'm not exaggerating. You look back historically, and only Hasek, even Igor Shesterkin, when he won the Vezina, and his raw save percentage was like a 931 that year, which I think only Hasek had ever beaten in an 82-game season. Remarkable stuff. And Shesterkin's goal saved above expectation was in the high 20s, I think, or low 30s. So Sorokin blows by that. You're talking basically like in the 2000s, there hasn't been a goalie who's done what he's done, who's been above and beyond what you'd expect in terms of the quality of chances that the Islanders are giving up. So that's where I go. I think a lot of people look at that. The Vezina in particular is voted on the league by the league's general managers. They have access to all kinds of data too, so I feel like it's a no-brainer there. But the Hart Trophy, it's a little bit of a popularity contest sometimes. The Islanders don't always get the attention that some of the other teams get.
Not very popular.
I think Macklin Celebrini, being out in San Jose, they're an upstart. If they do make the playoffs, I feel like it might be a slam dunk for him to win the Hart. But Sorokin's going to be a finalist if he keeps this up. And if he's not, you're going to hear it from me, and I hope you're going to hear it from Tom Boyle, because I don't think it's going to be Schaefer.
We definitely will.
But your guy Ilya definitely is in the running.
And hey, Tom, I mean, at the end of the day, right? I think you'll settle for a Vezina and a Calder, right? Maybe don't need the Hart, but hey, if he has a Hart-worthy season by the time the season's over, I think that would be absolutely outstanding. So T. Boyle,
I know what Tom would really want is a Conn Smythe. So let's keep that one in mind.
Hey, we'll take it. You never know. All right, moving on to big time 1972. Would Isles be more likely to do a deal before or after the Olympic break?
I'd probably say after. I just feel like, and they could certainly be working on something. I think Matthew Darche has been pretty good about keeping things quiet, if he's working on anything.
Okay.
I think if you're looking at like Jordan Cairo is kind of the name that I threw out there. But if you're looking at that kind of deal, and I'm not saying that there is that kind of deal in the works, if St. Louis is even going to move him or not, but if you're working on a deal like that, you don't really have, you don't feel the desperation to beat people out for that. You're going to, St. Louis is going to consider a bunch of different offers for him. They might consider not moving him. Like I said, he's signed for five or six more years at 8.125, which is going to be a really reasonable number over the next few years as the cap goes up. So I don't think you're trying to beat anybody out for that one. You don't need to make that move before the Olympic break to sort of sort things out. The only way you'd want it before the Olympic break is to maybe get him acclimated in a couple of games and then have the break to kind of move his stuff and get used to being out here, that sort of thing. I tend to think that if the Islanders are going to be as patient as they seem to be so far in terms of deciding what they're going to do, they will wait till after the Olympic break if they're going to make any additions. Having said that, if there is a low-cost ad to be made, if they decide to put in a waiver claim on Nick Leddy, then that's the move you make now, and you just sort of integrate a guy who's essentially a bottom six forward or a bottom pair defenseman. That those are easy to integrate. Those are guys that don't need to play every game. If it's a Nick Leddy, obviously knows people here. So it wouldn't take a lot to get him acclimated to being on Long Island. So my gut tells me they're going to wait. And having said that, maybe by the time we hang up here, the Islanders will have made a giant move. We don't know.
We'll find out soon enough. But yeah, Arthur, I'm with you there. I think Darsh is going to use as much time as he can, unless maybe just the perfect deal falls in his lap and he's like, all right, might as well do it now, right? But yeah, I'm with you. So I think patience will be used here. All right, moving on to Magician Matt. Thoughts on whether Vegas can get an extension done for Anderson? I don't see how they fit him under the cap for next year. He would be perfect for the Islanders next year.
Interesting. I don't know how perfect he'd be for the Islanders next year. I mean, you got to make a decision on Scott Mayfield for sure, if that's the case. But a Schaefer Anderson top pair would certainly make a lot of people happy. These guys, he hasn't played every game this season like he did the other night against the Islanders, but that was a pretty good one. And he's a top flight guy. And yeah, I agree. But Vegas seems to find a way. They make these trades like the one they made for Noah Hannafin a couple of seasons ago, where you're like, they can't fit him under the cap. And a month later, they had him signed. Kelly McCrimmon, the GM out there, and George McPhee, former Islanders advisor, as the president. Those guys are thinking 9 and 10 moves ahead of the rest of us. And most importantly, they do not care about the long term. They obviously do, and they want to figure out a way to fit him, but they want to win. They made this trade. They gave up a first. It could be 2 firsts if they win the cup. And Zach Whitecloud is a decent big young defenseman because they want to win this year. And I understand that not everybody's in that position. And you can't turn around and the Islander fan and say, well, why don't we do that? I think we know why they're not doing that, because they're not there yet. Maybe they will be in a couple of years, and that would be awesome to see. But Vegas has set the bar for themselves as, we try to make a move like this every year because we think we can win every year. And they've been right. I mean, they've been out of the playoffs, once in their 10-year existence, and won a cup, been to the finals a couple of times. So it's a hell of a standard to set. And you do have to make some sacrifices, and you do have to start getting some calculators out to figure out how the hell it's going to work in the future. But for now, we got our guy and we're ready to roll. And that's a great attitude to have.
Yes, indeed. Jealous of those Vegas Golden Knights. Another one from Big Time 1972. Any concern Horvat had a setback? It was first thought he may rejoin on the road trip. Waugh confirmed that is not happening.
I'll believe Matthew Darsh and say this is an abundance of caution. He did just have a similar knee injury that he came back from and was back for a week before he injured this one. So I imagine that they really are trying to be cautious. And there is, honestly, this Olympic thing, this is probably his last shot at an Olympics. I imagine that there is some care for that. And I understand that's a separate issue from being an Islander, but super important to the guys that were selected. I'm sure he wants to be healthy when he goes over to Milan and plays with Team Canada. So I think the caution is smart. I think you want Bo Horvat for the stretch run, for the long haul. You want him coming off of that Olympics feeling good. You certainly don't want to have happen what happened with the last time the NHLers were in the Olympics with John Tavares. Yeah. I hate to even bring it up, but obviously it feels relevant now that the one Islander representative is going over there, and you hope he doesn't get hurt. But I think with two knee injuries, even if they were distinct ones back to back like that, I don't know that you need to fly him across the country and wedge him into the lineup with the way that the Islanders are going right now. When they get back, is a different story. They need him to be successful this season. So hopefully, when they get back, he will have skated hard for whatever it is, 10 or 12 days. He'll have maybe one day of practice and they'll be ready to go.
Sure. And you talk about him going to the Olympics. I mean, there's a chance, I suppose, potentially to the Islanders' benefit, that he may not even get in too much because he's kind of one of those extra forwards, right?
Yeah, I feel like this year though, like Braden Point, who knows if he's going to be there now for Tampa. From Tampa, he's out long term. He might not make it to the Olympics. I feel like guys are going to move up and down this depth chart a lot, even in the next couple of weeks. It's just this. There's been so many injuries, so many things are in flux with all these NHL rosters. That's going to affect the Olympic rosters. So I got a sneaking suspicion that Bo Horvat's going to see some time over there, and I think Canada's going to make a deep run, and it'll be interesting to see what he does as part of it.
All right, we'll go with one more from Joel Beniz, 5456. You brought him up before, but let's flesh it out a little bit more here. Did you guys talk about Drouin? So let's talk about him, because I remember it was a few weeks ago where he came up in Questions Bruin, and Arthur, you asked me what I thought of the pickup, and I liked it. I said it's great, and pretty much since then he's disappeared. So maybe it's my fault, but maybe you can talk about Drouin here, and maybe just the quiet play he's had of recent. Obviously not getting on the score sheet. We talked about how he's not much of a finisher as far as scoring goals. His specialty has really been putting assists up on the board. What do you got on Drouin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at his numbers now. What is 3 goals, 17 assists. This is really who he is. This has been who he is. He's not a prolific goal scorer. He's much more of a distributor. He fits on really good teams. He was as a young guy, he was part of that Tampa team that went deep in the playoffs, and we all remember, I think, from the second round in 2016 when Thomas Hickey sent him in next week with a huge hit in, I believe it was game 3, and then he came back and scored that key goal from the slot to tie it, send it to overtime before Tampa won it. He's kind of grown into this player throughout his career, a super high draft pick, very skilled guy, but I think he's become more of kind of like a fundamentally sound, distributor who works best with guys that can really fire it and put the puck in the net. And obviously, numbers are always going to look good when you're playing with the guys in Colorado like he did the last couple of years. So, I can't get too down on him because he's a complimentary player.
Right.
He's pretty responsible defensively. I think on a team where the metrics for a lot of guys in the Islanders have not been very good, his metrics are okay, and maybe partly a product of who he's been playing with. You'd like to see him shoot the puck more, but I think that's a complaint that has been consistent throughout his decade plus in the NHL, that every coach he's had would like to see him shoot the puck more. It's one of those situations where you're not bringing him in to be a 20, 25 goal scorer. You've got guys here that can do that, and Bo Horvat is obviously doing that. Simon Holmstrom's getting a little bit closer back to doing that. Emil Heineman's been kind of a surprise at doing that. Matthew Schaefer's been a nice surprise. But really, when you look at this lineup, the big knock on it coming into the season was, where are the goals? Where is the scoring going to come from on this team? And that's kind of where we are. We do still wonder, where is the scoring going to come from? That's why I keep saying Jordan Kyrou's name, because you could use a real bona fide, no conscience shooting goal scorer in that top 6. A guy who is going to be, whether he plays with Horvat or plays with Barzal, is going to be a guy who's going to be out there to score goals. And they have a lot of really nice players, and Jonathan Drouin is a nice player, but he's not going to get you a goal when you need it. And that has been the knock on him for a long time. So I feel like if you're looking at him to score goals, you've already looked in a lot of other places for the goals and you haven't found them. So I understand the frustration, but I feel like not a surprise who he is and where his numbers are right now.
Yeah, and not that it has to be an either-or situation for Darsh if he is going to make an ad at the trade deadline, but I do wonder what he might prioritize, whether it's, kind of trying to replace that production he might have gotten from Kyle Palmieri if he was healthy, or if he looks to shore up the D, maybe that, bottom 6 left side where, you kind of just have that carousel of players, because we don't know yet what Isaiah George might bring there if and when he comes up. So I wonder what Darsh may prioritize if he does actually make some moves at the deadline.
Yeah, and I, kind of threw it out there on Twitter this afternoon that I still feel like even if they claimed Nick Leddy, I think Isaiah George is going to get a crack at that spot.
Yeah.
he's kind of, he didn't really get because of the injuries in the AHL, he really didn't get his turn among the guys that they've been using. And maybe they wouldn't even had a rotation like that if he had been healthy when the need arose, when Alex Romanov was lost for the season and you needed a guy to come up. If he had been healthy then, he might have just come up, taken that spot and run with it. And we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
True.
So I think he deserves a shot, and I'm interested to see when they get back up from the trip, if he does get his shot and what he does with it and how that determines what Matthew Darche does. But yeah, I think regardless of that, it's a tough decision to, whether it's sitting a guy like Shabanov, if they have to put somebody on waivers, if they're going to add a forward. You've got good vibes. You've got a good thing going in the room. It's a difficult decision to add. Adding a Jordan Kyrou is a different topic, but if you're looking to kind of rent, I had mentioned, before he got traded from Seattle to Columbus, and now because he tried to wreck Matthew Schaefer's season, I don't know if Mason Marchment is an option, but let's say if he was, you're still taking someone off the roster. You're taking someone out of the lineup to put him in. You might be upsetting some of that chemistry that's gotten you this far. So there's a lot to consider, especially with a rental. And I'd be interested to see if they do decide to go that route, keeping the costs low in terms of what they have to trade to get a guy who could fit in, on a third line, and whether that even really has an impact. To feel, you look at the guys that might be out there. It's fair for Matthew Darche and Ryan Bowness and the rest of the front office to say, is it worth the disruption to add this person in here? Jordan Kyrou, you say yes, 100%.
Right.
Some other guys, maybe not. So I kind of feel like that's why I feel like it's going to take a little bit longer than the Olympic break for them to sort of sort out what they want to do up there.
Yeah, I'm with you there for sure. And this last one, not a question, more of a statement here, more of a note from DTMR0729. Pre-game show record is probably worse than the matinee record, and guilty as charged, man. That is probably true. We've had a rough go with the pre-game shows, Arthur, but hopefully we turn that around at Borelli's next week, Thursday night in Long Beach. Islanders could use a win there, not only for them, but for us too.
Yeah, it's a great place to watch a game, even the games that have sucked this year, which we've got a couple of. So hopefully everybody comes out and makes it a more festive atmosphere, and then we'll have a little more fun, and the Islanders will feel the love from us down there.
We're looking for a big bounce back second half here from the Islanders and Hockey Night in New York. So we'll see what we can do there. But folks, awesome stuff. Thank you so much for all your questions. That will do it for Questions Brewing. And that, of course, means that will do it for the program. So, want to start first and foremost by thanking all of you for hanging out with us live here for our first remote-only edition of Hockey Night in New York, hanging out with us here at 6 o'clock after we thought it was going to be 2. Arthur, big thanks to you, man. Great stuff. As always, hope you're staying warm up there. And looking forward to hanging out with you at Borelli's next week for Islanders versus Rangers. And also a big thanks to our wonderful sponsor, Razor, Kniff, and Lonstein, attorneys at law, ready to fight for you. Nobody likes going to court, but if you have to, call 212-LAW-1500 for a free consultation. And folks, please, if you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe. That helps us out. It means a lot. And Arthur Staple, please remind everybody where people can find you on the interwebs.
Stape NHL at Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky, and the Tri-State Hockey Report at Daily Faceoff twice a week. We talk about all 3 teams. We've got some miserable co-hosts talking about the Rangers and Devils. So Islander fans, I know you love coming here, but you can also come there and make fun of Mike Rupp and Johnny Lazarus for their crappy teams. It's great.
That sounds like a great time. And you can do that, 2-3 times a week?
2 times a week. It's been we could make it as often as possible, as long as the Islanders are the best team. I love it.
There you go. Love that too. You can follow myself on Twitter and Blue Sky at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow the show on all social media platforms at Hockey Night NY. You can check out the website at hockeynightny.com. We missed the crew tonight. Ed, Jay, Jake. Hopefully, at least some form of them will be back with us at Borelli's next week. But either way, for Arthur Staple, I've been Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night in New York. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at Borelli's.